right, we're midway through March 15th. We're going to start just centering ourselves. So go into your less dominant cross-legged position and just take both hands and adjust your thighs. So you're rolling the outer thighs up, the inner thighs down, which helps you spread apart the flesh underneath the sitting bones and helps our legs sit down a little bit deeper. And then finding your weight, kind of balancing your shoulders above your hips, finding the very center points of your sitting bones. And then see if you can simultaneously tap into the weight of your legs and the lightness of your torso. Lifting from the chin to the base of the skull, spreading the chest. And then keeping your shoulders back, joining your hands together in front of your heart. And softly closing your eyes and pointing your gaze down toward your cheeks. Settling into the ease and the steadiness of this seated pose. And as you very delicately hold these wise actions, just dropping into breath observation, sensing the inner body, giving your mind a chance to catch up with your body. See if you can kind of scan for any unnecessary effort. Could have some tension in the face, as we know, the jaw. Maybe the shoulders aren't quite surrendered. Maybe there's a gripping in the abdomen, something we'll be kind of focusing a lot on today. Maybe the legs are a little reluctant to settle. There might be some gripping in your hips and your groins. Go ahead and bring your chin and chest together, bowing your head. Let your hands move down to your thighs. And on an in-breath, raise your head and gently let your eyes open back up. And welcome. So we'll just do a few seated warm-ups before we kind of go right into talking about the psoas muscle. This is a back bending week, and I like to refer to that as, you can switch the crossing of your legs, by the way. I like to refer to that as front body opening week. And we're going to kind of focus on the section between where the torso joins with the legs, which is why the psoas is kind of what we're talking about today. That's the muscle that connects our torso to our legs. And for a lot of us, it's very tight, which can limit our experience in back bends, amongst other things that aren't quite so positive. So let's just do a few seated warm-ups before we kind of move into targeting that area of the body. So just drop your chin to your chest and roll your head to one direction. And then bring your head back to center and move your head to the other direction. And just take a few passes at this. You might notice tension in your neck and shoulders. And try to move the head to the side on the in-breath and to center on the out-breath. And as you're ready, you're going to bring your head back to center. Lift your head. And now turn your chin and align it with one shoulder. And whatever shoulder you're not aligning the chin with, you're just going to kind of float that shoulder back and encourage your head to more deeply rotate toward the shoulder that it's trying to be above. And close your eyes so to make sure that you're not doing this with your eyes kind of straining. Lengthening the neck. Tilt your head slightly back. And the shoulder the head is turned away from, just creep those fingertips out as far as you can, staying connected with the floor. And just take a few more breaths here. Just really inviting a lengthening to the side of the neck. And then sliding your hand back in, bringing your chin above your chest. You're going to turn your head to the other direction. The opposite shoulder, you're going to gently just invite it to press back. And again, make sure you're not kind of doing this with your eyes. So close your eyes, keep moving your chin in closer alignment with that shoulder it's trying to be above. Resisting the opposite shoulder back. And then tilt your head slightly back. And then the hand that's farthest from your chin, you're going to crawl that out away from you until the arm is more extended. Just inviting a kind of a more lengthening, deepening sensation to the side of the neck. Just a few deep breaths. We're going to kind of be mimicking this action with the psoas. So it's just a little bit of an experience of this lengthening we're going to be doing in the abdomen, pelvis, inner thigh. Good. And now bring your head back to center, bring your hand back in, and we'll clasp the back of the head with our hands. Spread your elbow tips back and look up and just press your head into your hands. Take an in-breath here. And on your exhale, wrapping your arms around your head, hollow your belly, navel toward the spine, curl your gaze in, make yourself a little ball. Inhale, open back up. Really pressing head into hands to create some nice resistance to help you get the shoulder, elbow tips back. And exhale. We'll do it 3 more times on our own with our own breath. And once more. Good. And now open back up and release your arms down. And before we move on to our backs, we'll do a little bit of a kriya, which kind of is going to wake up the center body. So legs are comfortable, whatever that is for you. Maybe cross-legged isn't your ideal. But we're just going to kind of stabilize with our hands holding our thighs or our knees. And you're going to feel your sitting bones over the earth. And you're just kind of moving in a circular pattern, oscillating the torso. Think about this as kind of touching the circumference of the sitting bones. You're circling over the circumference of your sitting bones in a smooth way. You're going to be contracting and also opening the abdominal space. And we'll do it a few more times in this direction before we switch. Let's do it one more time here. And then you're going to kind of center yourself and begin to switch directions. So moving in the second direction. Those of you that were here Friday, thanks for participating in Karen's class. She subbed for me so I could go do some real estate stuff last minute, which is kind of the nature of the job. So let's do 2 more rounds here. Just whatever you've got. 1 more. And then kind of wind your way back to center. And we're going to be finding our way onto our backs, using a blanket for your head if you kind of have that chin floating high, shortened back of your neck. We don't want that, so we want to have a nice long back of your neck. So taking some height under the head if that's the case for you. And we are just going to start in Supta Tadasana, reclining mountain pose. To feel the breath, the muscles of the psoas are interlaced with the diaphragm. And so every time we breathe, we affect the psoas. So your arms can be restful, but you're going to power up your legs like you're standing in Tadasana. So your feet are separated hip distance. Your toes are above your heels. And you're just going to breathe normally. You don't have to do anything extra with your breathing. Just kind of sensing the area kind of right outside the navel, down toward the hip points, sensing the breath, sensing any movement there, any sensation. because a tight psoas can have an influence on our breathing, there's a lot of connection with the nervous system and a tight psoas. So if we can release the psoas or start to learn how to be less gripping with our psoas, which we're going to do today, we can have a positive influence on our breathing. And of course, like I said earlier, this has a lot to do with back bending because we'll be elongating the front body in the center where we need to kind of call upon for back bends. Good. So now I'm going to have you kind of feel your psoas muscle, actually feel it, palpate it. So you can place your left foot on the floor and you're going to bring your right leg kind of 90-degree knee, shin level with the floor. And you're going to use your right hand and strongly press on your right thigh and bring your left hand over to your right abdomen, kind of right outside the navel. And as you're pressing on your thigh, you're going to feel the abdomen probably gripping or tightening. So if you want to think about kind of the exact point of the psoas that we want to kind of feel right here, it's kind of halfway between your hip crest and your navel. You drew a diagonal line. And as you press on that thigh and resist that thigh into your hand, you're probably feeling that area gripping. If you do a little circular massage there, you might get a sense for how much tightness you have. For some of us, it's excruciating, and that's a really tight psoas. So don't judge yourself, whatever you find, we're gathering information. And the psoas runs on both sides. We're going to do this on the other side. So you can go ahead and kind of soften down with the right foot. You can keep it on the floor. Lift your left leg, extend kind of the heel of the left hand into the left thigh. Your right hand will be used to kind of palpate. So you're just kind of finding, you can either just slide it right outside of the navel, to the left of the navel, or you can kind of use your the spread of your fingers to feel that distance between hip crest and navel, and it's right kind of in the middle, smack dab in the middle. And then again, you're resisting left thigh, you're kind of pressing hand into thigh, thigh into hand. And once you feel the contraction of the psoas, that tight, grippy muscle, then maybe do a little bit of a circular massage to kind of sense what you've got going on there. The psoas does a lot of contracting. Every time we lift our leg, it contracts. Sitting in a chair, it's contracted and passive all day. And lots of this causes it to shorten. And then we get a lot of results of like postural stuff and disc issues and, a lot of negative effects. So we need to kind of tap into this muscle and start to learn how to release the tension and lengthen it back out. Okay, so go ahead and release that. Step down. And now you're going to extend both legs. Place your hands on your hip crests. So one hand on each hip crest. It can be fingertips, it can be your whole palm, whatever you feel like you're more kind of engaged with. For me, it's fingertips. And I want you to think about narrowing the distance between your hip points. So we have to contract the transverse abdominis between the hip points. This is what's going to help you save the psoas from doing everything all the time. So if we can identify the muscles that run between the hip points here and kind of think about your hip points narrowing, you're going to help your psoas stay long and supple, prevent it from doing everything and always being contracted. So as you're holding your hip points, lift your left leg an inch from the floor. Try not to let your left hip point float up. Straight leg, whoever that was, can't see, but straight leg. So just an inch over the floor. And then keep holding with the musculature between the hip points, narrowing the hip points. You're not going to feel the hip points move, probably. So don't expect to feel this gigantic, exaggerated closing, narrowing of the hip points. Lower the leg. Good. Lifting right leg. Try to keep the hip points level. So you're not trying to elevate the right hip point 10 feet from the floor. So keep them level as best you can. Keep kind of contracting between the hip points. Good. Lower the leg. Just do this a few times on your own, lifting and lowering. You don't need to hold for an excessive amount of time. You're just going to kind of coordinate lifting that leg and thinking about narrowing the hip points. Okay, so just taking turns back and forth, left leg, right leg. Okay, and now bring both feet back to resting. Let your feet flop out for a moment. Put your hands on your belly. Take a couple deep breaths. Just kind of let it go. We're going to be kind of bringing some evidence, some experience that we can sense the difference between engaging what you just engaged and not, and seeing the result in the psoas. So instead of being hands on hip points or hip crests, your fingertips should be right above them. So place your fingertips right above them. And I want you to now squeeze the area between the hip points. Engage that contracted, the transverse abdominis. Lift your left leg again. And hopefully you didn't feel a lot of jumping or gripping happening under your fingertips. Lower it. So we're going to try to do this with wise actions first, keeping the narrow passageway between the hip points and lifting and lowering the leg. And hopefully you're not feeling a lot of reaction under your fingertips. Okay, and in a moment we'll do the version where you feel the reaction. So you're just lifting and lowering, keeping a nice amount of effort happening between your hip points. And remember not to distort or rotate your hips. So do your best to keep your hip points level. Okay, we're going to do, let's do 2 more on each foot. And you only have to lift about 1 inch from the floor. And after you bring the foot down next, either foot, again, just flop the feet out, rest your hands on your belly, take a few breaths, just kind of let everything go. Bring your fingertips right back above the hip points. Put your feet back in Tadasana so you have toes above the heels. And then you're going to quickly lift your left leg. Yeah, and lower it. So hopefully you felt that jumping underneath your fingertips, like a quick gripping or a contraction. So that's when we're not wisely engaging the transverse abdominals and we're making psoas do all the work. And this is not helpful to psoas because it's doing that all day long, every day when we're not on our yoga mats. So let's go back just so we finish on a good note here. See if you can wisely lift and lower the legs a few times on each side. Keeping the psoas quiet, soft, not jumping, not gripping, using the abdominals, narrowing the passageway between the hip points. Good. All right, go back to resting. Let your feet flop out, hands on your belly. Take a few deep breaths. Okay, we're going to come into a half boat. We're going to be contracting again. So we're bringing the thigh toward the chest, but I want you to try to bring back in that transverse abdominal area between your hip points so that this isn't all happening from the psoas. So we can work the psoas, but in an intelligent way when we're using the flexion, the hip flexion, and we're drawing the thigh toward us. So place your feet on the floor. You're going to grab the back of your head with your hands. And on an exhale, you can lift your right leg, lift your head from the floor, and bring your head and thigh toward each other. And think about narrowing the passageway between the hip points. You're going to bring your head down and then extend that right leg fully. We're going to stay on the right side for 5 of these. Okay? So we're going into a contraction and then an extension. Okay, so exhale, you're drawing the thigh toward the chest, you're raising the head from the floor, you're trying to narrow the hip points. Remember the feeling of a softer psoas, not the kind of reactive, contracted, hardened psoas. So do it slowly enough you're able to kind of observe yourself here. You're resting the head and extending the leg between those half boats. Let's do one more on the right leg. Make sure to extend the leg, rest the head, and then after a couple breaths, you can bend the right knee and place the right foot on the floor. And we'll be starting with hugging the leg in. So as you're ready, you can take a nice inhale. On your exhale, you'll squeeze the left leg toward your chest. You'll raise the head. Try to keep that intelligent action going right between the hip points. Make sure to fully extend the leg and rest the head between those contractions. You're inhaling as you extend and exhaling as you do the half boat. Let's do two more like this. Last one. And once the leg is extended, take a few moments there, just softening, letting everything go, a couple breaths. And then you can go ahead and bend the left knee again. We're going to shift over to our side. We're going to come into Asana, which will be a nice way to extend the psoas, to lengthen the psoas. If you need a kneeling blanket, feel free to spread one out. And we'll start by kneeling down on the left knee and stepping the right foot forward. And you can just have your right knee a little bit behind the left hip point. You'll already start to feel the psoas lengthening out when you have kind of a diagonal kneeling thigh bone. But your right knee can start directly over your right ankle. And just take your hands onto your hips. And you're going to just shift your weight a little bit forward, not to your fullest, but just shifting your weight a little bit forward to start to open and elongate the left psoas. But then I want you to kind of think about pressurizing your right foot forward, the left knee back, as if you are going to split your mat in half. So pushing your right foot forward, the left knee back. And then we're going to take the left hand to the back of the head. Yep. Tilt the left elbow up and gently back. And keep gently shifting your weight forward. Keep kind of thinking about you're going to break your mat in half with the power of your legs. You're pulling it apart. You're ripping it apart. And we'll stay for a few more deep breaths. Let your head press into your hand. Don't strain your neck. Just let your head fully press into the hand that's supporting it. Deep breaths. And on an in-breath, you can help yourself just kind of gently back off. Bring your hands down. You can separate your knees just for a moment. You might sit back in a child's pose if you need a little bit of a rest. You might just kind of pause with your hands on the floor. So just find a way to be restful. And then as you're ready, you can start to set up second side. We'll be kneeling on the right knee and stepping the left foot forward. So bring a little bit of an angle to that kneeling right knee and thigh. You want to kind of have your weight more forward, but bring the left knee above the ankle. You can start with your hands on your hips, squeezing the elbows just a little bit closer together, and then just gently shifting your weight forward. And again, not to your fullest maximum. We don't want to kind of overdo it. We want to kind of ease into the lengthening. And remember, there's a book on your head, so don't tilt your head down. Keep your torso kind of upright if you can. And then imagine you're going to rip your mat in half because you're pushing that left foot forward and you're kind of gently dragging that right knee back. And then keeping that, bring your right hand to the back of the head. Lift that right elbow tip up and back. And just kind of gently turn the right abdomen toward the left. Just kind of calling upon this elongation of the right psoas. 5 breaths. Keep the action of the feet, the foot and the knee kind of spreading apart. Wonderful. Gently on an inhale, you'll just kind of bring your weight back. You'll help yourself kneel down with both knees, maybe sitting back for child's pose for a couple breaths. Just taking a few moments to notice. And now we're going to be making our way to standing, but we're going to come through downward facing dog with a little bit of a chance to, again, elongate psoas muscle. You can move everything away from your mat so it's free and clear. As you're ready, exhale, extending the legs. And now you're going to take your right leg up and you can bend the right knee and gently turn and peek under your right arm. And the weight of the right leg falling to the left is going to help you lengthen the right psoas. So your hips are definitely turning to the right. You're peeking under your right arm. And just a few deep breaths. Go ahead and rotate your hips so they're in the normal downward dog position. Extend your right leg, toes coming back to the floor. Once you're touching down with right toes, extend the left leg up behind you. Bend the knee. Start to turn your hips left. Look under your left arm. And the weight of that left leg falling to the right will support you elongating left psoas. Keep breathing. Go ahead and turn back to facing the floor. You can touch down with those left toes and then go ahead and creep your feet toward your hands. And then you can bring yourself to standing. So if you have a wall, great. If you don't, find a chair. We just want to have a little bit of support because we're going to be stepping on a block and dangling one of our legs. So if you don't have a wall, you can start with your chair off to your left. If you have a wall, the wall's to your left. And you'll be standing on the block with your left foot. And it doesn't need to be high, so just your lowest block and the length of your foot. So not a horizontal block, a vertical block. You'll stand on that block with your left foot. And the wall or chair is just there for your support. Once you're standing on the block, I'll wait for a couple of you who are still kind of setting up. But once you are standing on the block, you'll notice the right hip drop. So the first thing I want you to do is just bring your right hip up by kind of sucking the femur head into the hip socket so that your hips are level. That's important. You can just place your right hand on your right waist or whatever's supported, so your arm is kind of supported there, and just start to gently, slowly swing the leg. But keep trying to find a way to lift the femur head up into the hip socket. So not too fast, just kind of slowly swinging the leg. And this is not as obvious, but it is a really nice release for the psoas. Just a few more swings with this right leg. Just kind of play with it, see what you've got. Maybe go a little faster now that we're kind of coming towards the end of this side. And then you can slow it down until you're able to step off the block. And I just want you to stand and just kind of stand in Tadasana for a moment off the block. Close your eyes. And just see if you notice anything. And it's totally fine, of course, if you're not really sensing anything, but just see if you do. I feel more spacious on my right kind of center body, around my psoas. Sometimes it's because we don't feel it because there wasn't a change. Sometimes we don't feel it because we just aren't yet sensitive enough to that particular feeling in the body. So whatever it is, just trust that all work is good work. All practice is good practice. And we'll try the other side. So open your eyes. And you'll be stepping now down on the block with the right foot and taking support in your right hand, either to the wall or the chair. And again, right away, that left hip just drops. Because of gravity, we always have to deal with that. So sucking the left femur head up into the hip socket, bringing that left hip up so they're aligning, keeping that relationship as you start to gently bring a little swing to the leg. How often do we get to do this? Not very often. We usually have to stand. We don't get to lengthen the leg out this way. So it's kind of a nice little treat for the body. And then you're going to do kind of your last few swings here. Just be playful, just kind of notice. The idea is not to throw the torso around. So if you've been throwing the torso around, make sure you do a couple with your torso really stabilized. If you're throwing the torso around, you're bypassing the opportunity to get anywhere with the psoas. Okay, so slow it down enough that you're able to kind of stop eventually. And then step down. Come back to mountain pose. Feet are hip distance for today. Close your eyes. Maybe you feel more even now. Maybe there's kind of an awakeness in your center body that wasn't there before. Maybe your posture feels different. Maybe your breath has changed. And again, maybe you're not noticing any of that, and that's fine too. But always taking the time to notice what you noticed, notice what you don't notice is a good idea. All right. Okay, we're gonna come into side angle pose. Sometimes in side angle pose, we feel very oppressed in the bent knee, front leg side. So we're gonna see if we can use the tap into the psoas to bring more space to that pose. With block support, 2 blocks, kind of spaced shoulder distance apart toward the front right edge of your mat. And then once you have those 2 blocks, shoulder distance apart, front right edge, step your feet wide, and you're gonna face the long edge of the mat. Your right toes are gonna be near those blocks. And of course, you're creating the warrior 2 triangle setup. So it's the right heel intersecting left arch, right toes 90 degrees, left toes slightly turned in. And when you have a right knee bend, you have a 90-degree bend one day, someday. That's what we're hoping for, okay? So from there, you're going to bring your hands, fingertips, I should say, fingertips to the inner right foot on the blocks, your tallest setting. Your wrists are in line with your shoulders. And as you pressurize your fingertips, I want you to go back to the area between your hip points and engage the transverse abdominis. So as you press down on the fingertips, this is going to automatically do that for you. Then I want you to keep that and go back to the feeling of ripping your mat in half with your feet spreading, not really moving, but kind of pushing in opposite directions. Okay, so we have engaged the transverse abdominis, which is supporting the psoas. We've got good actions going on in the legs. So now I want you to come off of your right heel. Come off your right heel, lift your right heel from the floor. Yep. And really stepping down into your right big toe ball mound. Everybody find that? Really engaging right big toe ball mound. I want you to engage the right knee toward the small toe. Okay, we've got the heel lifted, we've got big toe ball mound really pressurized, but we're taking the knee toward the small toe. Beautiful. Now keeping that lower, the right heel again. Placing the right hand down, see if you can bring your left arm into side angle pose shape. And we're kind of, this is the grand finale here, so you're engaging the transverse abdominals. You're really pressurized into big toe ball mound, and you're steering knee toward small toe, and you're breaking your mat in half. I want you to lastly roll your abdomen from right to left. Maybe you have more space here today because of those actions. Good. Go ahead and find your block underneath your hand so you can help yourself walk to center, and then you can bring yourself up. And just heel toe walk in. And I want you to compare sides again in mountain pose. So we have one side we didn't do, we have one side we did do. Put yourself in mountain pose, close your eyes. So a lot of times we get really jammed up and jarred up in the center body in that pose. What we just did is we found a little more space, elongating the psoas. It's not a back bending pose, but we'll get to that in a moment. Back bends. Okay, so we'll set up second side. So the blocks are going to be inside the left foot this time. So however you're working with your mat, just make sure you're working now with the left foot being the front leg, right foot, back leg. Blocks inside the left foot. Intersection of left heel to right arch. Right toe slightly turned in. Left knee comes above left ankle. And then fingertips on blocks, blocks in line with shoulders. Pressurize fingertips and engage the area between the hip points, which, as you remember, is a helper to the psoas. So the psoas doesn't have to grip and contract and harden and shorten. Okay. Then start to work the feet in opposite directions. Beautiful. Now keeping those two actions, lift your left heel from the floor. Bring extra weight to your left big toe ball mound, which tracks the knee in. So now you're going to take the knee and track it out, but keep pressure in the left big toe ball mound. So we are targeting the area of the psoas that is the lesser trochanter, where it attaches to the femur. This is the inner thigh kind of area. And you're probably feeling a nice elongation there. So hopefully you're feeling that. Keep magnetizing knee towards small toe, but you're going to lower heel back down, hopefully keeping that space, lower heel back down, and then see if you can put the cherry on top, add the arm, and rotate your abdomen left to right. Breathe. So the knee is tracking toward the small toe, but make sure it has an anchor point of that big toe ball mound. Beautiful. And go ahead and bring your right hand down, and you can walk yourself wide again to center. And then heel toe walk your feet in and bring yourself back to standing mountain Tadasana. So putting your fingers on the dial of that pose and just finding wise actions, but make sure you're also dialing into the ease and repose side of Tadasana, so you can sense what remains from that side angle pose. What are the residuals? What's the effect on the energy, the breath, the sensation, your relationship to that pose? Do you no longer hate it? Shouldn't say that, but sometimes these things can make a difference in how we feel about certain poses. Good. Okay, so now we will get into a back bend. We'll do warrior one with a kind of a psoas highlight. So you don't need your blocks. You can put them aside. And we'll take the right foot forward, the left foot back. Make sure you're not on a balance beam. So your feet should be hip distance wide, although they're no longer in line with your hips. Your back foot has a 60 to 80 degree turnout, and your right foot is 90 degrees. So just bring your hands onto your hips. Start with your straight legs. And some of us can't get the back heel down, that's okay. Direct it toward the floor if it's still away from the floor. And then I want you to take the tailbone in toward the front body. And for our intents and purposes today, I want you to think about breaking your mat in half. Sometimes we work the feet in other directions for other reasons, to point out other actions. But today I want you to push the right foot forward, drag the left foot back, and just get a little more opening to that left psoas. Then I want you to just take your left arm up, straight up, alongside the ear. Exhale, bring your right knee above your right ankle. And now you're going to lengthen, kind of a lateral movement, bringing the left fingertips to the right. Yes, good. So you're not only bringing the left fingertips to the right, but slightly back. Remember the action we did kind of to elongate the neck? Okay. Don't forget to narrow the passageway between your hip points. Don't forget to rip your mat in half with your feet moving in opposite directions. And just keep kind of inviting this soft opening to left psoas. 2 more breaths. On an in-breath, you can straighten your right leg, bring your arm down, and help your feet together. And just take a moment in Tadasana again, just kind of comparing sides, feeling what you feel, noticing what you notice. Drop the shoulders. Try not to get in the way of your breath, so be kind of just a witness to the breath. And as you feel ready, you can start to prepare your legs for second side. So left foot forward, right foot back. Make sure you have enough width that you're not teeter-tottering like you're on a balance beam. You should have a nice, steady, stable stance. And put your hands on your hips and just kind of guide your hips to square. Legs are going to start straight. You're taking the tailbone in so that your torso is not pitching forward. Good. We're going to raise just the right arm. Activate your feet in opposite directions. And on an exhale, sink the left knee above the left ankle. And then extending your right fingertips to the left, like you're in the lateral pose, but also gently taking the fingertips slightly back. We'll stay 5 more breaths. Keep your eyes relaxed, your temples descending. And just try to tap into the area between your hips, engaging to keep a sense of softness in the psoas right above. On an in-breath, you're going to pull yourself upright, straighten the left knee. You can help your feet come together, bring your hand down, and hold yourself in standing mountain Tadasana for a few moments. All right. So now we're going to make our way to the floor for some bridge pose work. So you'll just need a block. We're going to place the medium height of the block horizontally under the sacrum. And then you can lift your right leg from the floor. So your thigh is vertical. Extend your right hand. And we're gonna be contracting the psoas a little bit, and then we're gonna be extending it. So you're gonna be pressing your thigh into your hand into your thigh, and some of you might need to use two hands. So feel free to use two hands. Try to narrow the passageway between the hip points. Keep your chin tucking into your chest. And now you're gonna let your arms come down, and you're gonna extend the right foot down and extend the right leg out long. Resting on the heel, toes above the heel. And you're gonna stay for 5 breaths, surrendering the psoas, elongating. We're gonna do this 3 times on each side, and then we're gonna do both legs together. Okay, so let's do it one more time, 2 more times, sorry, with the right leg. We'll stay here on the right. Lift your right leg, bring 1 or 2 hands, press the thigh into the hands, hands into the thigh, resisting, using that transverse abdominis, chin is tucked. On an in-breath, releasing the pressure, resting the arms, step down and then extend the leg, resting on the heel. And then once more, draw the right leg in. Take your hand or hands to the thigh. 3 breaths, pressing, thigh into hands, hands into thigh. Releasing, stepping down, extending the leg, toes above heel, 3 breaths. Go ahead and step the right foot underneath your right knee. Same thing left side. So as you're ready, lifting left leg, pressing your hands into your thigh. Letting up on that pressure, hands can come to belly, foot steps down, and then slowly begin to extend the leg. Toes above heel. Pressing your thigh toward the floor. We'll do that twice more. Step the foot back to the floor, draw the thigh in, bring your hands on top of the thigh. 3 breaths of good pressure, narrowing between the hip points. Stepping down slowly, extending slowly, and then really driving your heel into the floor. Really try to take that left thigh from front to back. Good. Let's do one more. Draw it in. Invite that good pressure. Engage your wise actions. Try to keep a sense of softness in the psoas. Remember that beginning where it jumped up and contracted and hardened. We don't want that. Good. We'll step down and extend the leg. And for 3 breaths, just really pressurize the heel. Try to compact the thigh front to back. Bring some good breath in here. And now you're going to lift both feet slowly, one at a time. And you're going to be pushing your hands into your thighs for 3 breaths. You can step down the feet individually, and you can straighten them individually, one at a time. And extend your arms, palms up. And then really try to pressurize your heels and compact your thighs front to back. And just enjoy a few nice deep breaths. Careful of overarching your back. Really use the pressure of the heels to keep the tailbone moving toward the ceiling. Good. Go ahead and bring the feet to the floor. Lift the block out from under you. We'll finish with Banana Asana, which is a great psoas stretch. So you can one by one extend your legs. Bring your arms overhead, interlock your fingers, sliding your feet individually toward the right. Sliding your interlocked hands toward the right. And attempt to keep your left hip and shoulder down. Hopefully they didn't just peel, like if that was a banana joke, from the floor. Now bring your left ankle over your right ankle. We'll stay for 5 breaths. And as you need more, you can always shift your feet and hands farther to the right. Attempt to keep the left hip and shoulder down. Gently ease your hands back to center. You can uncross your ankles, move the legs back to center. Take a moment separating your interlocked fingers. Keep the arms overhead, just be passive in your body. And then as you're ready, you'll go to your alternate interlock. So the other pinky is the loose pinky. You'll slide hands and feet individually before crossing to the left. When you find that edge, that elongation of the right side body, then pick up your right foot, bring it above the left, so your ankles are crossed. Attempt to bring the weight back to right hip and shoulder. Just welcoming a sense of softness and surrender. Just trust that the shape and the breath will do the work from here on out. You can gently start to ease your hands over, uncross your legs, walk the feet to center. Bring your hands onto your belly, bend your knees, widen the feet to the edges of the mat, and we'll just take a little windshield wipering to release the spine, letting the knees fall to one direction, the head rolls in the other. Inhale, pass through center. Exhale, knees to the side, head to the other side. Just doing a few on your own. You might stay on one side for a few breaths. You might move with every breath. Next time you come to center, you can just take any other movements that your body needs or wants. And then you'll begin to set up for final resting pose, getting whatever you need to feel the support. I'm just taking some time to make some adjustments so that you feel very spacious in your body, especially the limbs and the trunk. That you feel really evenly placed on the floor, extending the limbs away from the center body. Rocking the head until the neck lengthens out toward the floor. And then being on the backs of the hands to help the shoulders settle and soften and externally rotate. And once you trust that you've set up the pose in good alignment, then just start to tap into a more surrendered state. Running your attention very slowly and methodically from the head down the body, just kind of inviting all places, like you're turning the lights off in the building, powering down, paying special attention to the face, all the tiny little contracted areas of your face, softening, releasing the flesh of the face from the hairline all the way to the chin. Bringing a sense of softness around the eyes, around the mouth. And then inside of your mouth, softening the tongue. Relaxing behind the eyes into the center of the head. Softening between the brows. Softening the throat. Releasing your spine, starting at the brain stem. Just running your attention from the brain stem all the way down the spine to the tip of the tailbone. Inviting a full surrender. Noticing the body breathing on its own here. Softening the abdomen. The area between the hip points, now just letting it sink and settle toward the floor in a concave way. Feeling the hips like anchors to help you soften between the hip points. Releasing all effort from your legs. Softening your feet, your toes, tops of your feet, arches, heels, ball mounds, pads of your toes, in between your toes, ankles. And for the last few moments of Shavasana, resting in the rhythm of your breathing. Maybe imagining yourself in a tiny vessel like a canoe or a rowboat. Just lying in the floor of the boat. Sensing each breath like a wave as it occurs underneath you, rising and falling. Each wave unique. Big blue sky overhead. Your awareness like the big blue sky, the thoughts like the clouds. Also unique and gently passing through. And just sensing the spaciousness that we really cultivate in our bodies, translating to space, hopefully, between our thoughts. We get more and more familiar with this space when we practice yoga. Space where it's said that the true self resides between the thoughts. Let's just take a few more really focused breaths. Just be with the next 3 or 4 breaths. And start to draw yourself out of the pose with some deeper breaths. Maybe some simple movement. The fingers might want to wiggle. The fists might want to clench and then extend. Toes might want to clench and then extend. Wrists might rotate. Ankles might rotate. Head might rock. So just slowly bringing movement until you're able to gently move to either side of your body. Staying on your side for a moment or two. Try to come from here to seated in a way that you're staying present. Moving at the speed of presence, bring your hands to the floor. Put enough pressure into your hands that you can bring yourself to seated. And once you're seated, just taking a moment to sit tall with hands meeting in front of the heart. Just to kind of take note of the effects of this practice on your body, mind, and heart. From the place within me that I know to be divine, I honor that place within each of you. Namaste. All right, well, thank you all for being here. We'll do more work on the psoas and some back bends on Friday. So I'll hope to see you then. Take care. Happy Monday.